All right. Which one of you guys wants to be breakfast?
Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gland Bodybuilding Mountain. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit, and I figured I'd come up to the beach just for something for a change, right? And actually, after being here for a few minutes, I understand why I've been filming more in my garage lately, because when you film up at the beach, there's just so much wind, so it just kills the audio. So that's why my microphone's under my shirt. But one thing I wanted to talk about today was bench press form. And I was watching one of the old Muscle and Fitness Lou Ferrigno videos of him training. And there's a lot of stuff that he says that I don't agree with. You know, let's just say a lot of purist sort of thinking when it comes down to exercise form. And if you don't do it this way, then you're automatically doing it wrong, and so forth, right? As far as there's a correct form, but not taking into account the person's individual situation. But I will say I do agree with catering the exercises to putting the tension on where you want to feel it, right? So say if you want the chest to grow, it makes sense not to be doing some sort of super arched, hyper powerlifting type technique to include the pec minor, you know, like basically all your dip type muscles, but not necessarily the pec major, right? So this started a conversation with me in my own head, and also something he said if you want to hit the chest, keep your back flat on the bench, don't arch like a powerlifter. And I thought about that, and it makes sense, because if you're engaging the flat bench like a decline, are you really doing bench at all, right? So if you notice that keeping your back flat on the bench hits more of the chest muscle, that would be the proper form, assuming of course that it's not injuring you, or that you're not feeling some sort of weird tension in the tendons, or some sort of joint pain in the shoulders and so forth, because that's always the first priority, is performing an exercise where you're not getting joint injuries. Now, I can't see why you would get a joint problem by keeping your back flat on the bench, but you know, sometimes people injure themselves in very interesting ways. So if you have a situation like that going on, then I would highly recommend doing whatever it is that you need to do in order to maintain your bench, right? But doing bench presses in order to lift as much possible weight is different than doing bench presses to hit the pec. There's a subtle difference between the two, 100%, right? Sometimes the two cross as far as performing an exercise to lift as much possible weight efficiently can sometimes lead to more muscle mass in certain lifts, but in other lifts it can work against you, especially if you're having trouble isolating a certain muscle group. So you see, with the flat bench, there's lots of different ways to do flat bench. Funny enough, you'd think it's a simple exercise, and I guess it is, but there are variations that people use in order to accomplish different tasks, right? So what I'm talking about right now is there's going to be a subtle variation in when you keep your chest like this, right, flat, and your mid back flat on the bench, and you bench press, as opposed to, you know, doing this hyper arch sort of situation that I've seen, you know, lots of powerlifters do. Now, me, I kind of do a hybrid in between. I'm kind of like this, but not like, you know, like this type of hybrid type thing, because basically what these guys are trying to do is change the lift into a decline. And of course, that's why you see a lot of people that really don't have a lot of muscular strength. But what they do is they put themselves in an advantageous position just to lift more weight. But bodybuilding kind of makes you honest, right? I mean, you could cheat the weight up, but if you're not getting the muscular results, then you're either using momentum or, you know, a glorified technique, right? You know, it goes with the meme, like a lot of people, they make fun of people that do sumo deadlift instead of real, let's not say real deadlift, but the other form of deadlift, right? But, you know, barring all ego aside and everything, there still is going to be an efficient way for you to lift, and also an efficient way of you accomplishing a certain goal. And blending two categories together, those two categories will give you the best results. So let's just do bench like I normally do it, right? I don't know if you'll be able to see really well, but I stick the chest out like this, the shoulder blades together. But as you can see, I'm not sticking it out like this. I'm basically, it's kind of like a blend, right? And my shoulders in the proper girdle. Now the way that, like, say I'm experimenting with it right now, is just keeping the chest flat against and seeing if I'm feeling a bit more tension in the chest and a little bit less off the front delts, right? So this or this. And I have to say, they both feel different. I'm not saying one is better than the other right now. I'm not 100% convinced that keeping my back flat against the bench is the absolute best option, but it's not bad either. It's just a variation, right? So based on playing around with that, you might find a better angle for you to hit the chest more aggressively. So I would recommend to anybody to try the bench press both ways. Try it with your back slightly arched, such as the normal powerlifting sort of form, right? And then try it with your back flat on the bench. And I do remember Franco Columbu back in the day said something about, I don't know if he said he didn't train abs or if he said this is a way that he does train abs, but what it was that he would keep his back flat on the bench, even his lower back, right? And he would flex his ab muscles as he was doing his bench press movements, and therefore he got a bit of an ab workout at the same time. So this is something that's worth experimenting with, just to see if you're able to hit that pec major more. Now, one thing to expect is that the weight that you're lifting will go down, possibly significantly, because you're not efficiently trying to fire all the muscles. You're trying to say, how do I keep that tension on the pec major, right? But if you're performing bench presses for chest, it seems to me that it would be ideal to find whatever the form is that keeps that tension on the chest. So the other option you could do is you could have your heavy days where you're trying to focus on PRs or focus on heavy weight for the sake of just feeling heavy weight on the system to activate that nervous system, like I've talked about, getting stronger in that progressive overload sort of way. And then you have your days where you're using moderate weight, where you change form to more of a bodybuilder-esque form, right? A hypertrophy sort of form, to make sure that you're keeping that tension on the pecs and therefore keeping your back flat on the bench. But yeah, it's something to experiment with and see which one works better for you. I don't know, what one is better for you, but it is definitely worth trying and seeing. And I like experimenting with this stuff because it makes simple exercises more interesting. Because once you've done something a million times, you're like, okay, how do I play with this thing called the bench press and find out how to get different types of results from it? So yeah, I hope this helps out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgalantbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the patient supporters, and take care for now. Mountain. There's mountains in the background. You probably can't see them over these mountains, but whatever. I try to give you as much mountains as I can in every video. That's kind of the guy I am, help you out with mountains.